Hello everybody. Good morning. Thank you for coming in on the coldest day in Orlando. What is this? It's supposed to be snowing up north, so this is weird. I bring the snow with me, I guess. But here we're going to talk a little bit about, we're just saying opportunities for our holiness, opportunities for careers, opportunities for access. So my topic is going to cover the science you can see, using maps to understand health and nature. So my name is Luis Cruz. I'm the Community Engagement Manager for Hispanic Access Foundation. But I also did a lot of other stuff before I started with Hispanic Access. I was also a teacher. I taught human and animal anatomy in college. I was a biologist. I still consider myself a biologist. I got my master's in conservation biology. I did a lot of work around ecology. For those that don't know, ecology is everything. It's biology. It's all the systems working together. As you will see, I am a quote-unquote GIS expert. I like to say I'm good at it, but there's a lot for me to learn, and that's what I hope to do. But also, I'm a scientist. I use this information. I'm not only a natural scientist, but in a lot of ways, I'm also becoming a social scientist, understanding the people, the communities that these environments impact and affect. So, a little bit of what are we going to learn today, or what we're going to be talking about. First off is, what is GIS? So for many, it's maps. So what is that? What does that work? How does that impact me? What are some of the pathways in STEM and GIS, where the intersection where STEM and GIS kind of connect? How is health and environment impacted by that? And how we can use GIS as a tool to be able to help us understand our place in this planet, and then ways for us to get involved, ways for you to be able to use these tools. These tools should be available to everyone, not just the ones who work with them. But first, why do maps matter? So maps do more than just show directions. Maps help tell a story about our life, about our environment. It also can tell a story about our health and our place, our opportunities. I like to start off with this map here. It's a map of all the hazards in Florida, or at least in the coast. This map does really good in combining multiple information into one. It takes sea level rise, saltwater intrusion, which means is the salt water getting into our fresh water. We don't want that. We want our fresh water to be fresh. And then storm surge. So whenever a big storm happens, where does that water going to lead? When you combine all three, it shows that everyone where there is a dark red, that those are going to be impacted by those three things together. And we know what flooding can do. You live in Florida. There's hurricanes all around. So whenever these storms come around, we can understand now where those places of need will be. So this area right here is Tampa Bay. And you can see that there's a lot of these red areas right here. So it lets me know instantly. It points out to those city planners, the ones with the resources, that I need to go whenever there's a big storm happening. Those are the places, those red dots on this map are the places that I want to make sure those resources are and those opportunities are. Here's another map. Here's a Hurricane Milton strength timeline. So for those that remember, 2024, there was a big storm, Hurricane Milton. It started out in the Gulf, moving its way into Central Florida, passing through here. Again, this is really just illustrates what we can learn from this map. So if I was just to give you information on the hurricane, the wind speed, the temperature, and I would just give you the worksheet, it's really hard to kind of visualize what that means. It's hard to visualize the patterns that you can learn from it. But when you have something like this, you could understand that, wow, water temperature really does affect and make it, you can start seeing when the stronger the storm gets, the warmer the waters are. And then it starts to weaken once it gets to land. Those patterns are a way the scientists are able to understand how storms work through the Gulf, be able to, again, identify those places of need. So that way, as a meteorologist, if I see a storm kind of following the same pattern, there's a good chance I know where that storm will eventually end up being and affecting. But what is GIS? I want to break it down, make it as easy as well. So the technical term for GIS is Geographic Information Systems. I'm not going to use that. GIS is the easiest way to do. But what does it mean? It's quite easily. First, it captures and stores data. And you can capture data in a lot of ways. You could use satellite imagery. You could use a drone to capture that information. The GPS on your phones as you're walking around, that is data that is being captured by GIS. When you fill out a survey or you fill out a census, that is capture information data. So GIS is able to get that information, organize it in a way that we can see it. For example, this layer here is all the students. It lets me know where maybe the places in the neighborhood where more students are. This layer allows me to identify the different streets. So you analyze that data, and then you kind of put it together, and it ends up being this beautiful map that you probably see here all around. All this information all on top of each other, allowing you to be able to analyze a lot of information easily. But how does it work? So I think most of us have seen algebra graph, right? X and Y axis. So think of it that way. Think of it the same way that an X and Y point, whenever you see that X and Y, you could put that point on the graph. In the same way that you could do that with points, you can do that with places or locations. I don't know if everyone recognizes it. I'm a big football fan. These are all the playoffs for the ones that were in the playoffs this year. And just to kind of illustrate what that means, Orlando, the coordinates or the X and Y of Orlando is negative 84 and Y is 28. If I was just to get those numbers, now I know if it's a negative X and a positive Y, I'm going to be in the Americas. That allows me to kind of start to identify those places, make it easy for me to be able to work with those places. But again, how does that work? So I'm going to show you a map that I created. So again, here are all those cities that we just saw mapped out. So the way GIS does, now I'm able to place them on a map, on a location. It gives me the X and Y coordinates, and I put them here. So these are all the different cities that are in NFL. Let's say I'm living here in Orlando, and I wanted to ask a simple question. My favorite team is the Patriots. It's not my favorite team, but let's just say that is. My favorite team is the Patriots, and I wanted to go see them play in the playoffs this year. How many miles would I have flown? You could find that out on Google Maps, but essentially what that is, all that is someone taking a little point and taking it over here. I'm gonna move this out of the way. You know what? Let's do a different one. Let's say I'm in Seattle. There you go. So again, I fly across. It lets me know that I just flew 2,600 miles. Well, let's say from Seattle, I want to go to San Francisco for the Super Bowl. How much more did I go? Now I traveled 3,200 miles. Again, you could do this all on Google Earth, but this essentially started off like this. It just puts some points and then points on a map, and then you'll be able to understand information from that. But let's say, for whatever reason, I wanted to take a walk from Los Angeles to Chicago. What were something I'm gonna have to deal with? The Rocky Mountains. So again, GIS is able to do that, and all what you see here essentially are the Rocky Mountains. And after the Rocky Mountains, you can see how much flatter, how much easier for me to be able to walk or ride my bike there. Again, you will be able to do this without GIS or maps. Move this back over here. But who uses GIS? You know, we have city planners who use it, scientists and researchers, government agencies, and even nonprofit organizations like myself. I use GIS quite a lot. But I wanted to show you a couple of times where I've used it in the past. So I used to work for a wastewater treatment plant. And one of the projects we did, we built this facility, this building up here. Essentially all it did was capture all the pollutants and toxins from making it into this existing pond. So my job as a scientist was manage that facility, identify the different places that I could sample from, get water quality samples, and understand how the facility was working. I did a restoration project. So one of my projects was creating artificial reefs in the water. Essentially putting concrete balls with a bunch of holes in the water for fish to be able to live in. That's the easiest way. So I, as a scientist, had to find the right areas in the bay where I know fish are living, that it would benefit the community, but also it would be good habitat for the fish. This allowed me to do this with GIS. I also was able to work on a project in sampling the water. So here is another type of map. This is instead of an elevation map, so up, now we're looking at a depth map going down. So to be able to see the water. So anything where the dark green is the deepest part of this bay. Anything with the red is the shallow part, closer to the coast. So just to so what we did is we take this instrument, this machine, we dropped it in the water, and every so often, every few seconds, it would take a measurement. So what I had to do was figure out in the spaces in between. And I'd be able to identify how different the inside of the water channel was to the sides. It's quite, if you think about it, you realize, yeah, it's quite different. But it's important to understand, for us as scientists, how different was that? And this is another way that GIS can be used in the way that I did it. But my love for science and STEM started way back. I was very lucky enough that I was able to go to Yosemite when I was young. And it was a national park. For those that don't know, it's a beautiful forested national park. And it was the first time that I was able to see wildlife, first time that I was able to see so many stars in the sky. And it really just motivated me and inspired me to want to do more for my environment. Here's a couple of pictures of my time during college, and actually with Hispanic Access. I was part of their internship program here, where we did a lot of really cool stuff. I always like to point out, it was really funny when I made the pictures, that these four with the same t-shirt were 4 different days. I must really like that t-shirt to be able to, I swear I didn't do it on purpose. But I realized that afterwards, it's like, wow, Luis, you really like that pink flamingo shirt. But I was able to do a lot of that. This inspired me, and it made me realize that I didn't want to keep this information. I wanted to share it. I wanted to be there. And I also wanted to point out, along the way, I was lucky enough to have really special mentors. April Alex was one of the really special, because her entire priorities was to help communities with access to nature. She brought all this amazing science. She brought animals to the community, information, be able to get it. And that's the sort of life and career that I want to do and be able to use it. And using GIS kind of helps me be able to do that. But I want to give you some examples of how other scientists use GIS, how other people use this information. So I'm going to cover a couple of topics. One is food access and obesity. The other one is on environmental impacts. But before I do that, I want to show this map here. This is a natural disasters map. So this map, it might be a little hard to identify, but essentially what it is, this map is showing 3 different types of information. Again, being able to combine it into one easy way to do it. First is telling you the type of natural disaster that can happen in an area. Then it tells us by the color, how dark your little ring is, or be able to tell us how many people live in that area. And then how dark the colors are lets me know how much of those natural disasters happen there. And again, patterns start to kind of come forward. For us here in Orlando, I didn't realize it, but wildfire is a big natural disaster for Orlando. And actually you hear a little bit about it. There was doing some prescribed fires not too far away from here. And again, while those things are important and it's part of nature, that also can lead to some health impacts to our air, and be able to understand that. Obviously, for here in Florida, very little earthquakes or no earthquakes ever happen. You might get some definitely hurricanes and tornadoes and flooding, but drought and hurricanes are not so a thing. So those resources for those issues may not be appropriate for this. Again, allows us to tell us a little bit about our place in where we live. But I think this is the main point that I wanted, that health looks different by place. Where you live matters for health, and access and environment shapes those outcomes. Here is a map of the rate of new cancers in the United States in 2022. All you need to know is the darker the color, the more new cancer rates happen. If I was to move forward, here's the new cancer deaths of 2023. Patterns start to emerge. If I go back and forth a little bit, the couple of things that really point out to me, for example, Louisiana gets high amount of new cancers, but unfortunately, they also get a high amount of deaths from cancer. It kind of brings a little bit of perspective and understanding. You start to think about it a little bit. Excuse me. Because then you look at Florida, yes, where there's relatively high amount of new cancers, but the deaths are much lower. I start to think about it a little bit, and it makes me think that there might be more resources in Florida than there are in Louisiana. More health resources, more cancer treatments, more access to foods, healthy foods, be able to live that. So again, this information, you'll be able to start to see how those patterns started to emerge. But when talking about, for me, first I want to cover is food access. What does that mean? And what does that mean for our health? Not all neighborhoods have access to the same healthy foods that everyone else. And maps help to identify those gaps or those areas. See if I can do this again. So I created another map. Oh, not the right one, sorry. Sometimes with so many maps, you kind of get lost. There you go. So this one I created is about food access. And again, this is all stuff that you can do at home. So here we have Florida, right? If I wanted to, I'd start to identify food access gaps. First, you want to maybe look at grocery stores. So here is all the grocery stores. This is a big data set. It's all the United States, but we're going to look at Florida, and particularly Orlando. And this is all the different grocery stores in the neighborhoods. Okay? But again, it doesn't really tell us. You can start to see these areas where grocery stores tend to bunch up and areas where there's no grocery stores and no food. So let's say you are a single mother and don't have a car and want your family to have healthy food. But for me to go to the grocery store, I have to take a bus. It's going to be an hour or two. So all the little extra areas means there's a 10-minute walking distance from each of those grocery stores. The darker the color, the closer you are to a grocery store. Again, you'll start to see these gaps, these areas. Like for example, here in Lake Copeland, if I'm living here, I have no grocery store within 30-minute walking distance. I would have to drive to my grocery store. If I was to look, I'm not going to put it, if I was to map all the different fast food restaurants, I'm guessing that there's going to be quite a bit in this area. All right? But again, so let's me understand. Okay, so this is what people describe as food deserts, areas where there's little access to food. But what about, what are resources that we can provide? Well, there is after-school meal programs. And you can still see, yes, there is places, but these are usually where schools are, but the gaps start to emerge. But what about our seniors community? So these are senior feeding centers. And again, if I'm living in Lake Cherokee, Lake Copeland, Lake Wildona area, I have no access to those resources. Those are not easy to me to go attain. I would have to, if I wanted my family to eat, I might have to decide on either McDonald's or Burger King versus a salad from the grocery store that I make, or what have you. So this is, again, these maps start to identify these gaps in these areas. And is it quite important? Because we live in a very affluent country. And these are very, and sometimes very resource heavy communities. But how is it that there's certain gaps start to emerge within them? So next, obesity and health. Again, similar to that, health outcomes are influenced by food access. So that food access, again, you start thinking about, okay, access to the healthy food. I have to eat more bad food, leading me to more likely for me to be obese. Safe places to move. Maybe there's not enough space for me to go recreate, be outside. A park like this is amazing, but there's not enough of these parks in these neighborhoods. And again, I'm gonna bring back because I did another map, but now about obesity. And I'm gonna go a little, because I'm also now running out a little bit of time, but I wanted to highlight specifically Orlando. So all the green is a data of all the parks in the United States. And one thing that Orlando is lacking is information. Because you notice here that there is all these state parks around, but the local parks, although they're there, they're not highlighted. But when you start thinking about, like, for example, are the health rankings in Florida, you start seeing, again, these understanding the. So for example, in Orange County, 33% of adults are considered obese here in Orange County. That's quite a lot. But when you compare it to other places, so for example, these yellow spots in Alabama, again, maybe not enough resources. If we were to zoom in with the parks, there's not enough spaces to add. If you're to add the groceries, there's probably not enough grocery stores in those same big. But now we're looking at these communities that are 50%, more than half of them are considered obese. Again, leading to those issues. Okay, so maybe that is the case of this community. Maybe more information needs to go into these communities. More resources, more opportunities, more access to healthy eating. Again, maps help to, you'll hear me say this over and over, maps helps us identify those spaces. So I'm running out of time. I'm gonna kind of go through it. Again, but what about the environmental impacts? You've seen this, but this is all the Atlanta storms since from the 1951. For me, this is a scary map. This scares me. Because if I lived in Florida, you can barely see it covered by how many storms have happened. Again, identifying, without seeing this, it might be hard to realize, again, what the resources that we might need to be able to make sure that our communities are safe through these storms. And you can start to see some of those water impacts. This is a map of an environmental justice map from Tampa Bay. All you need to know is the little dash areas are disadvantaged communities or low resource communities. The yellow areas is Superfund site, meaning these are exposed sites that are polluted. They're bad for the health of not only the environment, but for the people. And all the red are the exposed, polluted sites in bad neighborhoods that could be impacted by sea level rise, by storm surge, which would mean that all those pollutants could then start to spread out into those communities. Again, identifying those gaps, identifying those ways that we can better resource them. Air quality is impacted by where you live. Here's a map of San Francisco. All you need to know is that the red is bad air. The green is better air. And one thing, for those that don't know about California, 101 is one of the biggest freeways that runs through the entire state of California. And you start to notice that the red, the bad air, is usually around those big highways. Guess what? It's usually around these neighborhoods, around these highways as well. Latino communities, minority communities, low-income communities. You know, I've seen schools, I've seen parks around these highways. Again, leading to those impacts of that. But I'm gonna kind of go through this one a little quick because I think it's important to understand. So this is about redlining. Again, place matters where you live and your impact. Back in the day, the government used to classify neighborhoods by color. A was green or best. Blue was desirable. C is yellow, is declining. And D is hazardous. I grew up in a D neighborhood, in a red neighborhood in California. Meaning that there was a neighborhood that was probably likely to be impacted by those issues. So as part of that, this amazing, and I can share the map itself, is these researchers created this dashboard. So meaning here, we're gonna look into Tampa because Orlando doesn't have it. So if you zoom into Orlando, you start to see there's different neighborhoods, the red, the A, B, and C, and D neighborhoods, and the population of each area. You can start seeing that there's about 45 in the area, about close to 45,000 people live in those neighborhoods. But what about, the impacts of those neighborhoods? In this one, it shows the nitrous dioxide, which is bad. All you think is bad air. For these two is bad air. This one covers the tree canopy, how much tree is in the area, and then how much cement is in the area. Again, if we were to move into Tampa, you'll start seeing a pattern emerge when I go through this. You'll start showing that more likely than not, if you live in a neighborhood, you're gonna have more concentrated anoxic gases or bad air. You're gonna see that there's more cement in those neighborhoods. You'll start noticing that there's less trees in those neighborhoods. Again, this all leading to this environment being impacted. But what does that do? Again, bringing it back to our health, and what is some of those impacts to our health? Here is the prevalence of smoking, more likely to smoke, the more likely to do physical activity, and the more likely to have low sleep. Again, if you were to go into Tampa, zoom in, again, you'll start seeing these emerges. You're more likely to be a smoker if you live in a red neighborhood. You're more likely to be less active. I didn't realize this, but you're likely to have less sleep, right? These are the neighborhoods where families, double income. You have to work 2 jobs, have less time. So again, bringing back to what that means by living in this space kind of tells a little story about what those neighborhoods look like. And then lastly, we're going to look at what the health risk of those. And again, you could already guess what I was going to show. But if you're looking again in the same area, Tampa, St. Petersburg area, you'll start noticing, again, red neighborhoods tend to have more strokes, more likely to have asthma, more likely to develop COPD. Bringing back to this idea, this thought that where you live matters. It's important to understand that. But, it's not, I also want to make sure to put this is a zoomed out perspective of a neighborhood. It doesn't tell the full story. Hopefully we're able to, by talking about it, understanding, we need to be better. As GIS person who works with GIS, is understanding how we can get that information from the community. And not just what is bad, but what is good, what is coming up. And there's different ways that you can show that, different ways to be creative with this. This is just a tool that anyone can use in any career. Depending on what would you like to map, that's like the first question you want to ask yourself when using this. Is it maybe your favorite outdoor activity? Here is a map of a biking journey throughout the United States and how different ways you can show that. Maybe is, following your favorite sports team. Here's a map of the travel impact to the Tampa Bay Lightning and how often they have to travel different miles. Maybe is your favorite artist. Here's a map mapping the Eras Tour, of the Taylor Swift Eras Tour. Again, you can use this as a tool in any way you want to do this. It's just a way to tell that story, whether it is a zoomed out big version of the United States, or is it just of your neighborhood, of your community, of your church, of your school. Maps help be able to tell that story. But the pathways and careers, there's a lot of ways to do it. For me, this is, again, a tool that you can use in any career, whether it is in public health, in science, in planning, in conservation, in community work. It is all about it. But it's really ultimately is about access. Access to information, access to opportunities. This is one of my favorite maps. It's a very basic map, but this to me is really important. This is a tactile map, meaning that there's feeling to it. For those that are visually impaired, maps can be something that they can't ever experience. But with this map, you can. So you'll see there's Braille all around, but the map itself is also elevated. And be able to tell the names of the different parishes in Jamaica. Again, bringing access to people without opportunity. So this is a really cool map. It's one of my favorite maps to show because it really brings that together, that idea that everyone, this is for everyone and not just for some. There's a lot of resources I can share. Anyone that's interested, please, reach out. I'll be more than happy to kind of share any other resource, including for the students, for those that may be looking into a network, but specifically maybe even the health resources that are available through GIS. So please let me know and I can share this presentation so you can have access to all of this. One last ask from y'all. Oh, two more before we log off. First, I have a little project that I'm doing. This project is, I want to map all of the Latino and Hispanic favorite outdoor spaces. So this is a survey. It's very simple. Just your name, your email, and your favorite place on the planet. What's the name of it, and why is that your favorite place? Because I want to be able to start to show that Latinos, this is part of a Latino and Hispanic culture también. We want to be able to be outside and enjoy these spaces. So this is my own personal GIS project that I please be more likely to take care, to be part of. And I, just to kind of get a quick sense, because so this is going to populate this living map of all our favorite places. So I already started to build it in. So you can start to identify what different places around the country and then why those spaces are special for our Latino community. So please, I ask if you want to be part of it. You don't have to be, but this is something that I want to do and maybe share the map. And you'll have access to the map as well, so you'll be able to play around with it. There's a couple different more information like park information, Latino demographics. So you'll be able to understand where the Latinos are, where are your different parks, and our special places. I'm going to leave this up so anyone wants to do the survey. But other than that, yeah, please, you can talk to me. We can have a conversation out in the back if you want. Hablo español también, so si quieren hablar en español, no se preocupen. Lo puedo hablar en español. We have a lot of cool stuff, people to do art stuff. I guess there's a lot of stuff over there también. There's a little mapping detective scavenger hunt activity that I have with be able to find places on using Google Earth with some clues to be able to do that as well. So we're gonna have some hands-on stuff with the maps as well. But thank you.